Who are we? We're Black Americans. I can trace my family back, my ancestors back to the 1700s. Okay? So we're Black Americans. We have been here since the founding of the country. That matters, does it not? Does it matter that our parents, our ancestors were here since the founding, since the 1600s, since the 1700s? Is that relevant? Is that significant? Yes, I think it is. Well, I mean, my ancestors didn't slave and sweat and, toil and all that hard work that they did for Joanne Reed to have a job. She's from the Congo. No fingerprints! About our lineage. Who are we? We're Black Americans. I can trace my family back, my ancestors back to the 1700s. Okay? So we're Black Americans. We have been here since the founding of the country. That matters, does it not? Does it matter that our parents, our ancestors were here since the founding, since the 1600s, since the 1700s? Is that relevant? Is that significant? Yes, I think it is. Well, I mean, my ancestors didn't slave and sweat and toil and all that hard work that they did for Joanne Reed to have a job. She's from the Congo. They worked for Black Americans to have jobs. They did all that for Black Americans, not people from the Congo who are first generation Americans. Not even Kamala Harris, who's Indian American and Jamaican.
Right.
My ancestors didn't work for Kamala Harris to have these benefits. They worked for Black Americans to have benefits. I think even Obama is not even a Black American. This is why using color, the skin color, is not sufficient.
It's American experience.
It's confusing.
Right.
And this is why I say white Americans and Black Americans have been in America the longest since its founding. And that is significant. That matters. That history matters. And so this is why, and I don't know why so many, and I want to get into this issue about Black women, Black American women supporting. I know it's nonprofit, but Black American women don't understand most of them, some do, but most of them don't understand. They think everything is about skin color. And that's a superficial analysis of the situation. They're not looking at the history. They don't know the history. And they're just so wedded to the political left position, embracing all of their policies. And their policies have been detrimental to Black America. They need to get away from that embrace of all these policies that are the detriment. So what I'm thinking, they're not doing their homework. They're not reading this cast your bucket where you are. Cast down your bucket where they're not reading this history. They're being superficial. They're just watching the television and going along with what the politicians say. That is not sufficient. About our
I don't mind the term African American. I don't want to be called African American.
Why is that?
I'm not African.
My grandmother was a full-blooded Iroquois.
As you're aware, in 1912, Dr. Walter Plecker became the first director of the Bureau of Vital Statistics. But he was part of the eugenics movement, which was a movement about creating one race of people, which was white, and everything else was put in a pot, as Tina Marie would say, and stir it up and call colored.
But basically, when he was the registrar for the Bureau of Vital Records, he changed the names of Indian people in Southampton County.
Exactly.
Their race from Indian to Negro or colored.
Well, it was referred to as colored.
The most significant thing here is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto and also people of color.
Some of us started here in this land. Everybody wasn't brought over from Africa.
It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. That the Indians were you.
What kind of face you got, Bill? That Mandinka face.
Mandinka? What fool stuff's that you're talking about? That's Africa. I ain't no African.
Well, I'm Mandinka. We're proud people.
And I'm American. I'm American. I'm American. I was born here. My mammy and my daddy was born here. And my daddy's daddy. And I ain't no African.
You talk more shit than a little bit. Back to Mother Africa. That's bullshit.
Without question, we are all Black Americans. You do not know a goddamn thing about Africa. I am from Detroit, Motown. So you can want Tootsie your monkey ass back to Africa if you want to.
Hello. Hi. How are y'all? Happy Educational Friday. Can y'all hear me? I think you should be able to hear me. Shout out to everybody in the building. How y'all doing? Happy Educational Friday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. Shout out to everybody in the building. Shout out to everybody in the building. Oh girl, fix these underwears. But yay. Shout out to everybody in the building. I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy to have you guys here. Let me see if is the sun at a bad place right now. I need a little more light. You know, I guess it ain't too bad. But yeah, I'm so happy to have you guys here. Today, we are going to discuss the 24th Regiment of the Army. Listen, it's a lot been going on in Texas, and there's a reason why I wanted to talk about it. Well, number one, I just recently saw the movie a few days ago on Amazon Prime. You need to go check it out. And we're going to get into a little bit of the movie. But what we're going to talk about is about the 24th Regiment. It was an all-Black regiment of Army guys, and they were hoping to go off to France to go to war, but you know how they used to do the Black people in the military, like the Harlem Hellfighters and all these, even the Tuskegee Airmen. They got to be desperate or damn sure have to need them in order for them to be utilized in the war and everything. But they were a regiment in the Army who was antagonized, shot at, and actually abused and harassed by the civilians in Houston, the clear civilians. And they ended up having a riot and ended up tearing the whole city down. Do you hear me? Tearing the entire city down. Now, these things, like I said, are buried most of the times because they don't want you to know that you actually had a rebellious spirit. I'm sorry, that's why they send the tethers to come over here and say stuff like, oh, just follow the law and say yes, sir, and bull crap, okay? But this regiment tore down the whole damn. They went through a lot of clear people in the city. They ended up hanging some of them. The other ones went to jail. Obviously, they got dishonorable discharges. If you're not informed about military, having a dishonorable discharge literally makes it where you can't work at McDonald's for the most part, okay? So it took up until last year. Trump repealed their dishonorable discharges and gave them all honorable discharge. It was a whole lot of stuff. Black people have fought in every war and have been through the worst in the military. You know, at times, I think to myself, why do Black people even join the military during wartime? And the only reason I'm saying that is because we've always done the most and got the least out of it. You know what I mean? And I get it. Sometimes it's tradition. A lot of people have family who's been in these wars or who's fought before them. And it's kind of a traditional thing. And I get that. But ultimately, it's just like, I wonder, and this is so funny to even ask, but I wonder why some Black people put themselves in those positions. It made me look at the Buffalo Soldiers. When we went over them, and it was talked about how basically they were used and utilized against other Indians when they were going through people's towns to put railroads down and all types of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And again, shout out to the Buffalo Soldiers. Those are still our ancestors from Texas. But ultimately, they basically found a way to get us to fight against other people and each other. You know what I'm saying? But I just wonder why we continue to do so. But get treated and dealt with the worst. Ultimately, a lot of us didn't get the GI Bill. I told you I have a great cousin, great cousin, World War II. He didn't get his GI Bill and died trying to get it. Like, we just been given the most to this country and this quote unquote military, and we always get the less out of it. But we're going to go into this because this rebellious spirit that you hear and see in Texas has always been there. And not only in Texas, it's been all across America. It's just they suppress these stories so you don't get to hear about them. But at the end of the day, this is something we need to talk about and discuss. Now, again, what kind of made me want to talk about it this week was because thinking about the situation with Carmelo Anthony and how the Clears are all surprised, because honestly, for the longest, we never, after Martin Luther King, a lot of us, I ain't gonna lie, it was Riot still on the West Coast and things of that nature, but a lot of us became extra docile. You know what I'm saying? Like we kind of like laid back a little bit. But I feel like within the earth repairing itself, now we're starting to get to a place where we're starting to, get knowledge of self, and not only get knowledge of self, actually realize that we have more power than we do. Okay. Now here's some mugshots from some of the guys. 1917 Houston is where this happened. Remember Texas, Dallas, I want to say. Was it Dallas that had the biggest KKK influence? So this was bold for these black boys, for these FBA, these indigenous Indians. This was extremely bold for them to go on this spree that they went on, but they had to do what they had to do. And salute to the elders, because they did what they needed to do. Now, like I say, they hung these boys. They didn't get them a fair trial. They didn't hang all of them. They hung, I want to say 13 of them or 16 of them. I want to say 13 because you know how they like to do their numbers. But they hung a few of them, put the rest of them in prison for life. But back then was hard labor. Remember the movie Life? Whenever they got life in prison, they went to the camps where they would go and build railroads and stuff like that. Okay. That's what prison was like back then. It was a way to get these people to get free hard labor. Okay, so a lot of them went there, but the culprits, the main ones, they have to make an example, and they hung them at the stake at high noon, and these young boys lost their life. And ultimately, it's a crazy story. I have a few photos. Let me see. Here's one of them on trial. This is them at the trial, right? Now, mind you, according to the movie, it was one sergeant who was a first sergeant, who was an older guy, who basically his dad had been in the military prior to him. And basically he had a resentment against the Clear people because he felt like, they just ain't crap. But ultimately he had to answer to them. Now, this other guy who comes in, who lost both his parents in riots, light-skinned dude, he comes in and he gets they want to promote him. They want to lift him up. And let me tell you something. This stuff still happens in the military today. Lighter-skinned black people have it easier than darker-skinned black people in the military today, right now, 2025. So they wanted to lift up this lighter-skinned guy and make him the officer and make him in charge. And you know what I mean? And then ultimately he ended up not wanting to do that. He wanted to stay with his people and fight with his people and have them get fair treatment. And the first sergeant had a lot of animosity toward him for that. Long story short, when it went down with them people, everybody put their differences aside and was able to work together. Now, let me say this, what I didn't like about the movie. In the movie, they made it seem like the Clears never came to get them. Like it was all a figment of imagination. Like somebody gave off a fake a sign that white people was coming, and they just randomly grabbed their blickies and started going on a killing spree. That's what they do, even in 2025. But that we all know that didn't happen. They were having it was a whole bunch of tension between these black army guys and the poor Clears in Texas, and it was a lot of head button back and forth. Okay, so here's another photo, and I want to show you something else. I got a couple articles from the time. Oh, this is another photo too of the guys in the movie. Now, when I'm thinking about the movie, I want to say this was the thicker one that they this was the thicker one that was in the movie. And I'm gonna show y'all a little clip of what the movie is about. But if you get a chance, Amazon Prime, go check it out. But here's one of the articles. 13 Negroes. Remember, I told you they like their numbers. 13 Negroes hang in Texas, found guilty of complicity in the riot in mutiny at Houston. 41 sentenced for life. Only the Army officers and sheriffs were present. Execution was kept secret. San Antonio, Texas, December 11th, 13 Negroes of the 24th Infantry found guilty of complicity in the riot of mutiny at Houston on August 23rd were hanged this morning. Only the Army officers and sheriffs were present. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Only the Army officers and sheriffs were present. The execution was kept secret until 9 o'clock of the day of the 63rd. I'm sorry. Of the 63 tried. Sorry. Of the 63 tried by court-martial, 41 were sentenced to life imprisonment. And remember, life imprisonment, like I said back then, was hard labor. They needed people to go up there and be slaves for the free so that they can build them damn railroads. That's what this was all about. And I have this one from the actual riot. Now, this one says 16 dead. Hold on. 16 dead, 22 injured from riot. And this is the Houston Press. This was the newspaper back in those days. Now, remember, these boys got so tired, they did what they had to do. You can't hear me? Oh, I think you can hear me. I think you just said, okay, gotcha. But they did what they had to do in order to, say, hey, we will not be played with. So the spirit of those men and those ancestors wouldn't surprise me if those ancestor spirit were in some of these people who rebel in Texas thereafter, okay, including Carmelo Anthony. Everybody don't have time for this crap. We just don't. So before we get into a couple videos that I have, I want to show you guys, I want to go over a little bit about these guys. And then we're going to also talk about how they came back. And Trump, I guess, was the one who basically overturned their dishonorable discharges and all that stuff like that. But y'all get the likes up on the video. Hold on, I gotta pull this article. Y'all get the likes up on the video. Let's get into the Houston riot of 1917. We been outside, bro. We ain't just jump off the porch. Best believe that. And we was never ones to just bow down and take it. I think that's why we still have the rebellious spirit that we have. You feel what I'm saying? So, okay, Houston riots in 1917. Camp Logan was the place. Here's a photo of Camp Logan at the time. This is where they housed the black people who are the black soldiers who were there, right? It says photograph picture of entrance Camp Logan circa 1917, right? Y'all notice they got rid of a lot of power lines. Neither here nor there. But anyway, soldiers marching from Camp Logan, and this is courtesy of Houston Chronicle, and it said the images are available on the internet, So it looks like, remember, the streetcars were the thing. Streetcars, and of course, there's the band, and those are the soldiers marching behind the band or the military band. Those are the soldiers marching behind. If anybody's familiar with military march and all that stuff, you understand what's going on here. All right, so Houston riot of 1917. In the spring of 1917, shortly after the United States declared war on Germany, the War Department, taking advantage of temperate climate and newly housed Houston Ship Channel, ordered 2 military installations built in Harris County, Camp Logan, and Ellington Field. The Illinois National Guard was to train at Camp Logan, located on the northwest outskirts of the city. To guard the construction site, on July 27, 1917, the Army ordered the 3rd Battalion of the Black 24th United States Infantry to travel by train with 7 white officers from regimental encampment at Columbus, New Mexico to Houston. Now, remember, I told you, the black people, they gave the odd jobs. Go do the cooking, go do the garden, go do the building. That's the stuff they did to the black soldiers in these times. From the outset, the black contingent faced racial discrimination when they received passes to go into the city. A majority of the men had been raised in the South and were familiar with segregation. But as Army servicemen, they expected equal treatment. Those individuals responsible for keeping order, especially the police, streetcar conductors, and public officials, viewed the presence of black soldiers as a threat to racial harmony. Many Houstonians thought that if black soldiers were shown the same respect as white soldiers, Black residents of the city might come to expect similar treatment. Let me pause and say this. There's a reason why these people fear us even getting a remotely equal playing field, because they know that we will surpass them because we did in the past. I keep telling y'all, we were not living in the slums like that, like they were. They were the ones who were poor, busted, and disgusted. We had what we needed. We had community. We had our own economics. That's where the jealousy came from. We were the most skilled. We were the most employed. We were the ones that were here, and they were the ones that were there. It took a lot of manipulating, I think magic, but manipulating and magic and a whole bunch of things to flip that conundrum. And that's why they're so afraid of us getting at least an inkling amount of equal justice or equal anything, because they know that it's going to make them a permanent underclass again. Not now, but again. All right. It says, Black soldiers were willing to abide by the legal restrictions imposed by segregated practices, but they resented the manner in which the laws were enforced. They disliked having to stand in the rear of streetcars when vacant seats were available in the white section, and resented the racial slurs hurled at them by white laborers at Camp Logan. Remember, the white laborers are poor, clear people. They're poor. They don't have anything. They over there working, living in slums too. Okay? Remember, a lot of these Black soldiers ain't coming from slums. They coming from families with land and all this stuff. They not coming from where they really down and out and destitute like that. Some are, but most of them aren't. There was a lot of animosity there because those clears understood that those Black people that they called, or that we call now, those Black people were economically, socially, and everything better than them. Okay, that's what it was. Insecurity. It says, where was I? Some police officers regularly harass African Americans, both soldiers and civilians. Most Black Houstonians concealed their hostility and endured the abuse, but a number of Black soldiers openly expressed their resentment. The police recognized the plight of the enlisted men, but did little to alert civil authorities to the growing tensions. When they sought ways to keep the enlisted men at the camp, the Blacks disliked this exchange of their freedom for racial peace. So basically, they want the Black soldiers to stay on base, don't go nowhere. And it was like, well, yeah, now we got to be stuck in a prison to appease these people. And they wasn't having it. Sorry, they wasn't having it. So let me scroll down, and those are the articles I just shared with y'all. On August 23rd, 1917, a riot erupted in Houston. Near noon, 2 policemen arrested a Black soldier for interfering with the arrest of a Black woman in the 4th Ward. Early in the afternoon, when Corporal Charles Baltimore, one of the 12 Black military policemen with the battalion, inquired about the soldier's arrest, words were exchanged, and the policeman hit Baltimore over the head. The MPs fled. The police fired at Baltimore 3 times, chased him into an unoccupied house, and took him to police headquarters. Though he was soon released, a rumor quickly reached Camp Logan that he had been shot and killed. Now, the movies display something different. They made it seem like somebody else had some stuff going on, and the civilian lady ended up, this man came over there, the sheriff came over there and was starting to abuse a civilian lady. One of his one of his soldiers was over there into it with the police, and then he came to his rescue. It was just a different scene, but you know how movies are, okay? So it was a rumor, that part was still in the movie, that the man was shot and killed. So a group of soldiers decided to march on the police station in the 4th Ward and secure his release. That's what we used to do. If the police could assault a model soldier like Baltimore, they reasoned none of them was safe from abuse. Major Neelan S. Snow, battalion commander, initially discounted the news of impending trouble. Around 8 p.m., Sergeant Vita Henry of one company confirms the rumors, and Neelan ordered the first sergeant to collect all rifles and search the camp for loose ammunition. So around this time, once they got word that they fellow soldier was dead, they was like, we about to go down there and we about to fight. All right. So it goes on to say Black soldiers rushed into the supply tents, grabbed rifles, and began firing wildly in the direction of the supposed mob. This right here is false, but we're going to go with the move. The white officers found it impossible to restore order. Sergeant Henry led over 100 Army soldiers toward downtown Houston by way of Brunner Avenue and San Felipe Street and into the 4th Ward. In their 2-hour march on the city, the mutinous blacks killed 15 whites, including 4 policemen, and seriously wounded 12 others, one of whom, a policeman, subsequently died. 4 black soldiers also died. 2 were accidentally shot by their own men, one in camp and the other on San Felipe Street. After they killed Captain Joseph Mattis of Illinois National Guard, obviously mistaking him for a policeman, the blacks began quarreling over a course of action. After 2 hours, Henry advised the men to slip back into camp in the darkness and shot himself in the head. Okay, now that's the that is the first sergeant. Okay, so the guy in charge. All right. So early next morning, August 24th, civil authorities imposed a curfew in Houston. On the 25th, the Army hustled the 3rd Battalion aboard a train to Columbus, New Mexico. Their 7 black mutineers agreed to testify against the others in exchange for clemency. Between November 1st, 1917 and March 26, 1918, the Army held 3 separate court-martials in the chapel at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. The military tribunals indicated 118 enlisted men of one company for participating in the mutiny and riot, and found 110 guilty. It was wartime, and the sentences were harsh. 19 mutinous soldiers were hanged, and 63 received life sentences in federal prison. It says 1 was judged incompetent to stand trial. 2 white officers faced court-martials, but they were released. No white civilians were brought to trial. The Houston riot of 1917 was one of the saddest chapters in the history of American race relations. It vividly illustrated the problems that the nation struggled with on the home front during wartime. So let me tell you what really happened. And it's kind of accurate, but you know, they throw their little zingers in there. Let me tell you what really happened. So what happened was these soldiers were harassed by the civilians in that area forever. They kept harassing them. Every time they turned around, it was something else. And these guys would go to their officers and go to their commanders and say, hey, these people messing with us. And they go, oh, yeah, we'll look into it. And they would never really look into it. It was all a bunch of cap, okay? So what happens is that situation with the woman and the clear sheriff over there messing with her and abusing her and slapping her around and all that stuff, that really happened. However, when Baltimore, which is the light-skinned guy I was telling y'all about, when he went over to ask about the lady, they ended up assaulting him. Now, because he never made it back home, they had somebody came back to the camp and told them that Baltimore was dead, but Baltimore was never dead. He was just in prison. Now, I believe that was a setup too, because it was a civilian who came back and said that he was dead because all the other ones had already fled. So then, boom. Once that happened, everybody was mad. They was getting all their blickies to go down there and pop some clear people, because remind you, they had already got word as well that there were a lot of clear people coming to the camp to kill them, because they had done shot and had a whole bunch of stuff with the clear cops or sheriffs or whatever. So they were arming themselves to protect themselves. The military at the time, or the major who was in charge, was like, no, you guys, I order you not to pick up these guns. Let me go figure it out. But they already felt like, listen, he's not going to figure anything out, because we've been coming to him about this crap for how long? And all of a sudden now you want to let us just trust that you're going to take care of it? You're not going to take care of it. So they were not confident that the major was going to take care of it, or their chain of command. And long story short, they armed themselves, took matters into their own hands, and let them clear people know we will not be fucked with. That's what literally happened, okay? I want to show y'all, there was this guy. So this guy kind of did like a review of the movie. I want to show you a little bit of that. A review of the movie that this guy had on here. But wait, before I do that, let me get y'all into the convictions that were set aside of these soldiers. One second. I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta stop eating before I come on stream. It says, and this is on the U.S. Army site, Army set aside convictions of 110 black soldiers who were convicted in 1917 riots. This just happened 2023. Secretary of the Army Christine Wormuth has approved the recommendation of the Army Board of Corrections of Military Records to set aside the court's martial convictions of the 110 black soldiers of the 3rd Battalion, 24th Infantry Regiment, also known as the Buffalo Soldiers, who were convicted following the World War I era Houston riots. The records of these soldiers will be corrected to the extent possible to characterize their military service as honorable. After a thorough review, the board has found that these soldiers were wrongfully treated because of their race and were not given fair trial, said Wormuth. It says, by setting aside their convictions and granting honorable discharges, the Army is acknowledging past mistakes and setting the record straight. The Houston riots took place August 23rd, 1917, following the months of racial provocations against the members of the 24th, including the violent arrest and assault of 2 black soldiers. Following the assault and amid rumors of additional threats to soldiers, a group of more than 100 black soldiers seized weapons and marched into the city, where a clash erupted. It says the violence left 19 people dead. In the months that followed, the Army convicted 110 soldiers in a process that was, according to historians, characterized by numerous irregularities. It says ultimately 19 men were executed in the largest mass execution of American soldiers by the U.S. Army. Can you think about that today? Could you imagine your person, somebody you know in the military decides to execute them? You do know they still have the power to do that, right? Especially during wartime. Especially during wartime. The military has a right to execute their people if they want to. If they see fit, I'll say that. So them executing, hanging all these men without even due in a trial was crazy to me, or at least a good trial or a just trial. They did that because that's what they wanted to do. It wasn't about your rank or anything. It was about race. How dare these niggas go out there and unalive clear people? That's what it was all about. It says the first execution occurred in secrecy and within a day of sentencing, leading the Army to implement an immediate regulatory change which prohibited future executions without review of the War Department and the President. So they tried them, made them guilty, and killed them the next day. In 2020 and December 2021, it says the South Texas College of Law petitioned the Army requesting a review of the court-martial shortly after the Army received petitions from retired generals Shortly after, the Army received petitions from retired general officers requesting clemency for all 110 soldiers. As a Texas native, I was grateful to participate in this process early in my tenure at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio. I am proud that the Army has now formally restored honor to the soldiers of the 324 and their families. Under Secretary of the Army Gabe Camiro, he said, "We cannot change the past. However, this decision provides the Army and the American people an opportunity to learn from this difficult moment in history." The Secretary of the Army asked that Army Board of Corrections of Military Records to review records pertaining to these court-martial cases and to provide recommendations about the appropriateness of each individual conviction. After careful review, board members adjudicated each case and found that significant deficiencies permeated the cases. These deficiencies led the Army Board of Corrections of Military Records to acknowledge that the proceedings were fundamentally unfair. The board members unanimously recommended all convictions be set aside and that to the extent possible, the soldiers' military service be characterized as honorable. With the support of our experts and dedicated board members, looked at each record carefully and came up with the best advice to Army leaders to correct a miscarriage of justice, says Deputy Agent Secretary of the Army for Review of Boards, Michael Mahoney, who oversaw the review. We're proud of the work we did to make things right in this case. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has been deeply involved as this case has unfolded and is prepared to assist any family members upon receipt of the corrected records. This is huge, and let me tell you why. I want to stop here right quick. You can't go back and change the fact that you sent a whole bunch of men to life in prison and you killed a whole bunch of your men. You can't change that. But what people don't understand, and I was telling this to my family about my great, like second or third cousin or something like that. Once records are corrected, things are owed to the soldier. Having an honorable discharge grants you certain rights. It grants you certain awards and everything. If anybody in the, I ain't gonna say in the Texas area because they had people coming from all over. Anybody, that's why genealogy is important. When I talk to y'all about reparations is bigger than slavery. Slavery is such a minute piece of what we are owed as it pertains to reparations. If anybody is any next of kin to these men, meaning you would only find this out through genealogy, you are owed by the United States military, okay? Because with an honorable discharge, okay, you are owed. And it wouldn't surprise me if you couldn't file some type of suit or something like that. Yes, you get military benefits, VA benefits, all of that stuff. All of it, okay? Because remember, their immediate heirs are probably not here anymore for the most part. This was in 1917. Probably their immediate heirs are not here. My grandma was born in the 30s and she 83. So more than likely their immediate children are not here. But I'm pretty sure their grandchildren are probably here. If not, for sure, their great grandchildren are here. Those people are awarded or should be awarded veteran benefits, VA benefits. And that means stuff like no down payment on homes. You see what I'm saying? All types of stuff. You just never know what comes with this stuff. So this is why genealogy is completely relevant and important. All that DNA spit in the tube, that's some bull. Y'all got to do your genealogy. I'm telling you, it's the only way you're going to figure out. Anybody who's unsure about what genealogy is, it ain't nothing but a long-ass family tree. You got to figure that part out. We are owed so much more than the slavery narrative. That's only one component. We are owed so much. This country owes us the country and more. Do you get it? So it says, relatives of the soldiers may be entitled to benefits. Instructions for applying to the Army Board of Correction of Military Records can be found at, and here's the website. Families may apply online at this website or submit a DD Form 149 application for correction of military records by mail, and this is the address. Let me say this too, and I want to make sure y'all can see this. Let me make this bigger in case anybody needs to check into this. Let me tell y'all something. Right quick, and I need y'all to really understand me right quick. There's the reason why it took them 100-something years to come back and correct these records. Do you want to know why? Most of us don't have our genealogy. Most of us don't even know that our great grandfather was one of the men in this regiment. So of course they're gonna keep this on the tuck and be like, oh yeah, we fucked up. Ooh, my bad. We're gonna make them honorable discharges. And yeah, by the way, if this happened to be one of your people, hit us up for the VA benefits. They know for a fact that most of us, the majority of us, have not done genealogy. And unless we have elders in our family that talks about this type of stuff, we don't have no idea that there are benefits, coin, and everything waiting for us. There's a reason why I took this loan, okay? It's very imperative that you do your genealogy. I cannot stress this hard enough. Please. Even if you got to start with just your grandmother, do your freaking genealogy. You want reparations? It's there. And this is only a minute piece. Wait till we start digging into that Freedmen's Bank and all them other Freedmen Bureau crap. Again, you won't be able to collect. You can't just say because I'm black. You can't just say because I'm FBA. You can't just say because I'm an Indian. You have to have proof of this stuff. Genealogy. It's not going to come in one big check because everybody didn't have the same experience. All of our people weren't slaves. So we're not going to all get a check from slavery. I know it's heart-wrenching. You can't believe it. Roots told you something otherwise. Everybody's not going to get the same thing because we don't all have the same story. Some of our stories are similar, but a lot of our stories are different. Do your genealogy. I can't stress that hard enough. Okay, so here's the two websites. Here is the address. Take a picture if you guys are interested in even just checking on it, or maybe you might know somebody. Who knows? It says family members or other interested parties may request a copy of corrected records from the National Archives and Record Administrations in accordance with NARA archival records request procedures found at, and here's the website. Let me push this down. Let me tell y'all something. The National Archives is not just for military. The National Archives is not just for military. You can use the National Archives for all types of genealogy and research, okay? Yes, if you want to find out military records, it's there. But what happened was a lot of the records that was kept on paper, they put them in this National Archive. They digitized them and put them in this National Archive. That's one of the other references you can use to perform your genealogy. Please, like I say, you never know. You just never know. Like, for instance, if you could find let me show you how you do it. If you can find, let's say you do your genealogy and you find out your grandmother's mother's name was Mary Sue Wells. I'm just using the name. Mary Sue Wells. And you go, oh, snap, my great-grandmother, Mary Sue Wells, was alive in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1946. I'm just using 1946. And around this time, holy crap, this and that was going on in Tuskegee in 1946. All you have to do, you can start with your census. You can go to the census. You have a location, you have a name, okay? And you have children. You can go to that era of the census to see if you can find her, or even before, because possibly she was put on the census before that as a child or as a young girl. Either way, go to the census, find out who was in her household, what was going on, then boom, take that information. You can go down to your city hall, your state, or whatever. They have records of all this stuff, and you can get all of the information that you need. Now, to get into the National Archives, you're going to need a social security number. I'm not sure if everybody had a social security number back then, but that's okay. That's okay. There are other ways in which you can navigate this thing, but that's how you figure out who your people are and what is going on. Because guess what? Mary Sue Wells, even though let's say it was a man, let's say it was Joe Wells. Joe Wells could be one of the 110 battalion. Joe Wells could be one of the people at the Freedmen's Bank who lost their money. You get it? This is how you figure out who and what you are. But please take note of that National Archives. Please take note of that website. That's another reference for your genealogy. But again, you're missing out on money. You're missing out on money. You're missing out on benefits. You feel what I'm saying? And they should have back stuff they should owe you as well. But again, they're not going to give you all that information. They're just going to push this out here on a little army website that literally nobody goes on unless they're in the army, and be like, oh yeah, by the way, if you or somebody you know these people, tell them hit us up. That's literally what they did, okay? So this 110th Battalion is history. It's FBA history. It's Indigenous history. It's Black history. It's Injun history. That's what this is. Let's get into a couple videos real quick. Let me see. Do I want to do this one? Yeah, let's go here really quickly. Y'all get the likes up on the video. Wait, before we do this, I did want to show y'all the do we need the movie? I did want to show y'all I thought I had a video. I could have sworn I had a video of it's a short one. Let me just go back. I'm sorry. I thought I had a video of the movie, but I don't think I put it on here. Let me go here. Y'all get the likes up on the video. Sorry about that, y'all.
First to volunteer for military service. 370,000.
This is One Mic History or One Mic on YouTube. Make sure y'all go check them out.
African Americans served in the military during World War I. 80 to 100,000 of them also saw combat. Many of them felt like this was the pathway to full citizenship for African Americans. The belief that amongst many.
If you need to access census records, it's online, census.gov, census.gov, G-O-V. That's all you need, census.gov. You know where else you can get a lot of these sites to? Where else you can get a lot of these sites to? Check out ancestry.com. When I say this, I don't mean go spit in the tube. But if you create an account on ancestry.com, it'll give you links to the census. It'll give you links to the archives. It'll give you links to find a grave. It's kind of like a hub for a lot of genealogy stuff. Now, if I were you, this is what I did. This is just me. What I did was I made a family tree on paper. Pencil, like not pencil and paper. I had pictures and I put all my photos up like on a poster board and I had names and I still have it. I went old school with my family tree. I didn't put my information into the ancestry.gov simply because I just I'm trying to piece it together myself and I don't trust that site right now. However, it's nothing wrong with doing that because what happens is you can find long lost family that you never knew because once you put your information in there, then you can realize, oh, snap, I got a cousin in Baltimore. Oh, snap, me and this girl in Philly got the same great-great-grandmother. You see what I'm saying? So it's good for that. So it just depends on you. I'm just saying for me, I went old school. I went and made mine off the board. That's just me. But y'all, again, do what you want, whatever you feel is necessary, because like I said, you can find a lot of people like that. So back to this. Sorry, y'all.
Welcome to One Mic. I'm your host, Country Boy. This is the first episode 1, season 1. Today, we're going to talk about the Houston Riot of 1917. If you like this, you enjoy this, please consider donating to our Patreon page, and I hope you enjoy it. When the United States declared war on Germany in the spring of 1917 and later in 1917, the Passive Selective Service Act removed the Army's quota that limited black enlistment based on their percentage of the population. This introduced a large number of blacks in the military and enabled the United States to ramp up to the war effort. Whites, on the other hand, didn't see any reason to change their attitude towards black soldiers. Most people in the South wanted nothing to do with black soldiers invading their town. And war officials initially decided against sending black recruits into the South for training. But Newton D. Baker, the war secretary for Woodrow Wilson, reversed this decision because he felt like it conflicted with military traditions. Baker, who was well aware of the potential racial issues, ordered his officers to exercise discretion and judgment to prevent any difficulty from arriving in this case. Texas in particular was infamous for its low tolerance for African American men in uniform. The war effort apparently took a back seat to maintaining the state's racial hierarchy. During the Spanish-American War of 1898, the all-black 10th Cavalry received unprovoked sniper fire from white civilians. The frequency was so bad that the commanding officers requested a military escort for the troops in areas they were supposed to be protecting. In 1906, 106 members of the all-black 25th Infantry was dishonorably discharged and imprisoned after being accused of conducting an unprovoked raid on Brownsville, Texas. Even though none of the men were ever identified, and investigators testified that the men were persistent in camp and all their weapons remained clean and unfired. So when the War Department ordered the all-black 3rd Battalion 24th Infantry into Houston, Texas for a guard duty during the construction of Camp Logan, the War Department actually felt like this would actually minimize racial conflict. Colonel William Newman knew there was going to be an issue, and the battalion's commander attempted to get the orders revoked. He stated later that he had an unfortunate experience where he was commanding 2 companies of the 24th Infantry in Del Rio, Texas, where a black soldier was killed by a Texas Ranger because it angered Texans to see a colored man in uniform. Later, Colonel Newman decided against revoking his orders, and the 24th Infantry arrived in Houston on July 28, 1917. Within hours, the soldiers experienced Texas under Jim Crow. The community in Houston was thick with racial tension and resentment because they had replaced an all-white National Guard regiment. The citizens expected the troops to behave in the fashion of local blacks and just accept the brutality, harassment, and racial epithets without comment or retaliation. The troops of the 24th were not welcome, and the locals made sure they were aware of this. The locals felt like their status as a soldier was negated by their race. The construction workers that they were attempting to protect during the construction of Camp Logan called them niggers on a regular basis and asked for their water to be separate. The local police used to berate, harass, and beat the soldiers. The men's status as soldiers meant nothing to the people of Houston. The 24th also spent most of their time in Columbus, New Mexico, and Manila, places where they faced little racial discrimination. So the soldiers of the 24th were not fully prepared for the hell of racism and Jim Crow in Texas at the turn of the 20th century. By this point, Colonel Newman was well aware of the issues the 24th faced in Houston and went to great lengths to avoid conflict, reduce tension, and hostility. Colonel Newman ordered all his men to be disarmed and their weapons to be placed under lock and key. He felt that disarmed troops would be treated as less of a threat by the locals and reduce the possibility of retaliation on the part of the soldiers. Only guards on the outskirts of the camp were allowed to have weapons, and they were only allowed to have rifles and 5 rounds of ammunition. Initially, this did work out to lessen racial tensions. Then, on August 20th, Colonel Newman was replaced by Major Nealon Snow, who assumed control of 3rd Battalion and immediately realized they were sitting on a powder keg and he needed to do everything in his power to prevent it from popping off. During the morning of August 23rd, 1917, the incident most feared actually occurred. The incident triggered by weeks of insults and police brutality. Lee Sparks, who was a policeman in Houston, was by all accounts the worst of the worst. In terms of race relations with the blacks, he took pride in putting blacks in their place and had a reputation for being a bully and a race baiter. So on the morning of the 23rd, when Lee Sparks and his partner Rufus Daniels patrolled Houston's predominantly black San Felipe district and saw 2 men playing dice, they attempted to stop the 2 men. And the 2 men ran into the house of a woman named Sarah Travers. The police came into the house looking for the 2 men and didn't find the suspect, but exchanged words with Sarah Travers. The police beat her and dragged her out of her house in a nightgown. As Sparks and Daniels attempted to call into the arrest at an area police box, they were approached by a private Alonzo Edwards, who had saw the incident and attempted to ask the officers what this was about. He offered to take custody of Travers. He was then pistol whipped and arrested by the officers. Later, Corporal Charles Baltimore, a black MP, approached Lee Sparks and Rufus Daniels to inquire about the arrest of Private Edwards earlier in the day.
Really quickly, so this is what they're saying happened. The black men were playing dice, shooting dice or whatever they was, as we've been doing since ancient times. Remember, I showed y'all the clay dice they found in Poverty Point, Louisiana. And they came in there harassing them, looking for them. And the lady was like, oh, it wasn't like that. And they end up pulling the lady out and beating her. Now, this is the thing about that situation. You got to keep in mind, these black men who joined the military, especially during this time, were proud men. Like, it wasn't just no bum ass, nothing ass niggas joining the military. You know what I mean? They were proud men. And when this private came to them and was like, yo, like, as a military police, so how military police work is I'm in charge of the military people. I may not be in charge of the place, but I'm in charge of the military people. If you go to jail right now, the military can come pick you up. Do you know that if you are in the military, if you are a military member and you go to jail right now, the military can come to the jailhouse and say, release this person to me. They belong to me. and the jail will have to release that person and have to go back on the back end and see what's going on between the military and how they're going to handle it. And a lot of times the military will say, we got it from here. You see what I'm saying? That's the jurisdiction that the military have over their own personnel. So when the private was like, hey, what's going on? And they beat the private and all that stuff, then of course it's going to rile these other soldiers up like, what the because if we were clear, we wouldn't have this issue. If we were clear, they would stand down, okay? But at the end of the day, it's about race. Y'all already know how I go. It's about race or whatever the case may be. And that's why things happen the way they happen. And I just feel so bad because these boys hadn't had enough and went rogue, as they should. But the movie don't show you this. And even the article I read won't tell you this because they're very strategic on what details they want to share. I'll say that.
Baltimore asks what if the trouble had been about, why the soldier had been arrested, and Sparks answered, what, you don't like it? Before Baltimore could even answer, Sparks hit him with his service revolver. And as Baltimore attempted to run away, they fired at Baltimore and he hid under a house. When they located Baltimore, they beat him and hit him with their service revolver. Later, Sparks would explain that Baltimore approached him using profanity. However, his partners, Rufus Daniels, refused to confirm the story and it seemed to insinuate that Sparks was not telling the truth. After the incident, a rumor reached the camp of the 24th that Baltimore had been shot and killed and that a white mob was planning to attack the camp. According to investigators, the soldiers immediately began to form small groups and discuss a possible march on the city of Houston and attack on the police. Major Snow, in an attempt to ease tensions, reached out to the police chief and was able to locate Baltimore alive but severely beaten. He was able to secure his release by explaining that he was just carrying out his duties as an MP. He also was able to get the police chief to order his men to refrain from calling the soldiers niggers and that Lee Sparks would be suspended pending investigation. To further attempt to prevent a clash between his men and the people of Houston, Major Snow canceled all passes that evening and posted extra guards around the camp. Major Snow believed he had defused the situation, but tensions amongst the black soldiers remained high because they feared they had been disarmed. They would be unable to defend themselves against a pending mob attack. It's tough to understand what actually caused fear of a mob attack to lead to the riot. We understand the events leading up to the riot, but what actually sparked the riot is cause for debate. What we're left with is two theories about what actually caused the riot. The first being that the soldiers were angry about the beating of Corporal Baltimore at the hands of a racist police officer, decided to conspire against cause and create panic to seek revenge on the white officers and the people of Houston. In this theory, Sergeant Vida Henry, who committed suicide during the attack, was a lead conspirator and deliberately deceived his superiors, even tricking them into seizing all the weapons in order to create fear among the 24th. The argument for this theory comes from testimony during the trial, and those that testified against the soldiers had a vested interest in placing the blame exclusively on the soldiers of the 24th and Henry, who died that night. The second theory is that the riot was a spur-of-the-moment decision rather than a premeditated plot. The men only left camp after being fired upon first. Next, believing that they were under attack, began to grab their seized weapons and return fire. There's some evidence to support this theory. The soldiers only had military weapons, and the initial shots fired near camp loading, according to testimonies, didn't sound like rifle fire. Also, the wounded near camp's wounds didn't result from military-issued weapons, and the bullets in the nearby homes near Camp Logan also didn't come from military-issued weapons. The soldiers would later testify that they only left camp to form a skirmish line to meet their oncoming attackers. In this theory, Sergeant Vida Henry, who was the lead conspirator in the first, gets swept up in the riot after failing to stop his soldiers from seizing their weapons and stopping them from disobeying orders and leaving camp. This theory is backed up by Major Snow, who later testified that Henry warned him that there was going to be trouble that night, and Colonel Newman, who testified that he was one of the few soldiers that actually liked it in Houston, and also is quoted as saying that he was of unquestioned loyalty and had been given responsibilities above his capabilities. Once the riot was sparked, though, the soldiers began firing indiscriminately on the surrounding buildings. After several minutes of shooting, the 150 plus soldiers left Camp Logan and marched towards the San Felipe district. They marched for over 2 hours. The soldiers stopped the car carrying 2 policemen. The 2 policemen were quickly disarmed and shot and killed. Later, a group of 6 officers stumbled upon the group of soldiers. One of those officers being Rufus Daniels, who was a partner of Lee Sparks. Rufus Daniels was armed only with his service revolver and was quickly cut down. The men began to beat his body with their rifle butts and bayonets. It was believed that the black soldiers were attempting to march on the police station. So the white locals, upon hearing of the riot, began to form large groups of over 200 men to guard the business district and the police station. This is the point where everything changed for the 24th.
Thank you, RPS, for the super chat. For the cash app. Okay, really quickly, just to pause in just a bit to give commentary because I don't want to just be playing somebody else's video. I believe that they were under the impression that they were going to be attacked. I believe that these men heard shots or somebody heard shots. And I believe instead of getting ready, they was already ready. I believe that they grabbed their blickies, and I believe that they were, because remember, these are war strategists. These people are military personnel. I believe they set themselves up to make sure just in case the cracker want to try something, we ready. You're not going to make it to Camp Logan because we already going to be posted up right here. I believe in all of that, something went left and they went to going crazy. Now, it wouldn't surprise me, and nor would I have an issue if they had them been tired and fed up enough to where they like, we need to just take matters in our own hands and went through the city and did what they did. I wouldn't even be mad at them. They wouldn't be wrong in my opinion. Okay? At the end of the day, they endured a crap ton of harassment, a crap ton of beatings, all types of stuff by these clear civilians who do you know in 2025, if you walk up to a soldier, especially in uniform, and hit him, do you know, girl, they will try you like you hit the police. You can't do that. But back then, a black soldier, it didn't matter about your rank or your uniform. You still was a nigga. And they utilized that, you see what I'm saying, to their advantage. So it wouldn't surprise me if they say, you know what, I done had enough, fuck it, everybody got to go. You feel me? But that's how fearless we were. That's how we demanded respect and stood on business behind that. That's what I'm talking about. We've been standing on business. Carmelo Anthony ain't the first. He's just the spirit of those who stood on business before.
They were approached by a man wearing an olive khaki uniform. The soldiers shot the man, believing he was a member of the Houston Mounted Police. But in actuality, they had killed one of their own, a Captain Joseph Maddy of the Illinois National Guard. The killing of a military officer seemed to drive home the seriousness of their actions and the pending consequences. It seemed to change their whole way of thinking, and the group of men immediately stopped and discussed for 2 hours what would be their plan of action. Many of the soldiers began to desert the group, and the remaining soldiers decided to return to Camp Logan, all except Provider Henry, who had apparently been injured in the shooting. He asked the soldiers to please put him out of his misery and shoot him. All of the soldiers refused. So after the group said their goodbyes and they left for Camp Logan, Sergeant Provider Henry committed suicide, most likely understanding the seriousness of his offense and the harshness of punishment that would take place. He decided to kill himself rather than wait for the army to dictate their execution. In the aftermath, 21 people were killed, including 5 soldiers and 5 policemen and 11 civilians. The War Department immediately shipped the 24th out of Houston to Columbus, New Mexico, to the protest of city officials. They wanted to try the soldiers in Houston, believing they had jurisdiction, and that justice could only be carried out by their hands. Houston was also placed under martial law, and city officials formed the Houston Civilian Board of Inquiry to investigate the riot. They called 92 witnesses. Most of their testimony came from hearsay, and none of them actually witnessed any of the violence. In the nights after the riot, racial tensions in Houston remained extremely high. The police under martial law began to perform raids on black homes and seize weapons, believing that the soldiers could not have worked alone. Many of the local blacks decided to leave Houston in the aftermath of the riots, believing Houston had reached its racial tipping point. 118 soldiers were arrested and charged with murder and mutiny. The court-martial was held in Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. Army investigators were able to get 7 soldiers to testify against the other soldiers with promises of immunity and leniency. The Army broke up the trials into 3 groups, the first being a trial of 63 soldiers held on November 1st, 1917. At the time, it was the largest court-martial in the continental United States. Their defense attorney, a Major Harry Geiger, was not even an attorney. Apparently, you don't have to be an actual attorney to defend someone in the military code of justice. And
that was another thing, too. They didn't even have a real lawyer. They didn't even have a real lawyer. They had somebody who wasn't even a lawyer defending them. Like, this is crazy work. That's why they had to go back and overturn those convictions. I'm telling you, the whole thing was set up for them boys to get killed.
Geiger just happened to be associated with the 24th at one time, but had no actual legal training. Also, the list of the soldiers that were put on trial was made from roll call that was done during the actual riot. And it's totally possible that participants in the riot never faced justice, and people who didn't participate in the riot were put on trial. None of the victims of the riot could identify any of the actual soldiers, and the only witnesses they had were the 7 soldiers that testified they gave leniency to. On November 28th, the court gave its verdict. 54 of the 63 were found guilty on all charges. 41 were sentenced to Leavenworth, Kansas for their natural life. 5 were acquitted, and 13 men were sentenced to death for masterminding a riot. One of those men being Charles Baltimore, who was charged for being the spark that caused the riot. Of the rest of the soldiers, 15 were tried on December 17th, and the last 40 were tried on February 18th. Of those tried, 10 of them were given death sentences. President Woodrow Wilson later commuted those 10 death sentences to life in prison and even issued a rare statement so that his actions could be a matter of record. He explained that each of the 3 proceedings, the court had been properly constituted and was composed of officers of experience and sobriety of judgment, and that extraordinary precautions were taken to ensure fairness in these trials. Wilson also affirmed the earlier death sentences because there was plain evidence of deliberate engagement in shocking brutality. He also stated that he commuted the remaining 10 sentences because he believed that a lesson of lawlessness during the riot had already been adequately pointed. He desired that the splendid loyalty of African-American soldiers be recognized and expressed, and hoped that clemency would inspire them to further zeal and service to their country. The 13 men that were sentenced to death didn't even find out they were going to die to the morning of the execution.
Damn.
Army told the media that the execution was going to take place in Leon Springs on another day, so there was no press coverage. The Army, expecting the worst, formed a guard of 200 soldiers to assist in the execution of the black soldiers. In their final words, they said goodbye to the boys of the C Company, and they were hanged simultaneously at 7/17. The men died with dignity in the face of injustice, and they were buried in unmarked graves until 1937, when the fort needed the ground for training. Later investigations found that the men had not been dishonorably discharged before their hanging. The military was authorized to bury the soldiers in a national cemetery in the city of Houston. The soldiers were able to find the respect they were looking for in death that they never found in life. Thank you for listening to One Mic.
Wow. So they weren't even dishonorably discharged before they were hanged. That no wonder they had to this whole thing was done sloppily. OMG, this was so sloppy. So first of all, you didn't have real lawyers representing them. They didn't have no real lawyer. Then on top of that, the only witnesses you had were the 6 men you gave clemency to. Then on top of that, you sentenced most of them to natural life doing hard labor. And then the ones you say you're going to hang, they didn't even know they was getting hanged till the morning of. Meaning you wake up tomorrow and think it's about to be child. And they're like, oh yeah, you going to die today. Nigga, what? Then you hang these men without even giving them proper just due. You got to discharge them. You got to give them a code. Like, just fuck it. Just kill them. Crazy. Like, you can't make this up. This is insane. This is truly insane. Rochelle, thank you, TD, for the super chat. Happy Educational Friday, Vu and Acorn crew. Thank you so much, TD, for the super chat. I appreciate you for always coming through like you always do, making it rain.
I make it rain. I make it rain. I make it rain on them hoes. I make it rain. I make it rain on them hoes.
Thank you, TD, so much. I appreciate you. Y'all get the likes up on the video. And then also, thank you, Monica, for the super chat. I love Educational Friday. Thanks a lot for all you do. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys are here. Y'all know this is my favorite videos to do, my favorite lives, these Educational Friday. This and then morning jokes. But yeah, so yep, no formal court martial, no nothing, T. Haynes. Just guilty, kill them. And listen, they were very strategic with when hanging these guys. They hung these dudes when nobody knew about it, and they knew if other black people listen. There's a reason why they made sure that nobody else knew about it, and why they also made sure they had guards around that. Because you don't think if other black people in Houston had known that they were gonna up and hang these dudes the next day, you don't think them people would have pulled up with their blickies? See, the biggest misconception we have in this military, or in this world, is that everybody was a punk. Everybody just laid there and took it. They knew that. That's why they hurry up and slid that shit on the low. Like, yo, we're going to execute them today, but it's got to be today, and nobody can know about it. Because they knew the other black people in that town who knew about this, because the whole thing was done in private. All of this stuff was done in private. If the people of that town had known about this, they would have came down there, and it would have been another civil war. You get it? These people are not stupid by far. They got us thinking we supposed to sing hands and sing we shall overcome. We weren't doing that. Somebody said 24th is a Buffalo Soldier unit. Sound about right. Because matter of fact, I have another video. Let me show y'all. Because I think they're buried, or not necessarily. They're buried obviously at the National Cemetery. But hold on. Watch this. Peep this out.
This evening, after more than a century, has granted clemency to 110 black soldiers at Camp Logan, many accused of mutiny in the 1917 Houston riot. Today, the Army recognizing those overturned convictions in a ceremony at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum, right here in Houston in Midtown.
So they granted them clemency and had a whole, and that makes sense. I'm so glad you brought that out, to you and whoever else it was that brought that out. This is why they did this at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum, because this was a Buffalo Soldier regiment. Listen, you got to think about it like this. Them Buffalo Soldiers were not to be played with. Not the 1st regiment, not the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th. They was not to be played with. These are guerrilla warfare fighting blacks. Them people knew not to play with them. That's why they hurry up and did what they did. Okay? Like, again, it leads me to tell y'all, like I said before, they know who we are. We don't know who we are. They know exactly who we are. We the only ones who don't know who we are. I promise you. It's just us.
Now, here's Michelle Choi.
Yeah, overturning these convictions is a historic move, one that many, including the descendants of the soldiers, say is long overdue, but they're grateful for.
Private Leroy Pinkett. Private Edward Porter.
It's a painful past that's lasted more than a century. In what's known as the Houston Riot of 1917, 110 black soldiers of the 3rd Battalion, 24th Infantry Regiment were stationed at Camp Logan in what is now Memorial Park during World War I, a time of extreme racial tension and segregation. After rebelling against discrimination, the soldiers were wrongly convicted of mutiny, murder, and assault, all of them represented by a single officer who wasn't even a lawyer. 19 of the soldiers were executed by hanging. It was the largest mass execution of American soldiers ever carried out by the U.S. Army.
And so the Army has undertaken a process to restore their honor.
Gabe Camarillo is the Undersecretary of the Army.
Having reviewed all these cases, it was clear there was a miscarriage of justice, due process wasn't followed, and now we get to do something to set things right.
To right the wrong of the past, the Army has overturned convictions of all 110 soldiers. Their legacies honored Monday at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum.
The Army hereby sets aside all 110 court-martial convictions of 324 soldiers.
Their service records will now reflect they served honorably, a reversal their families have been fighting for, including Angela Holder, whose great-uncle Corporal Jesse Moore was one of the soldiers executed. She's made it a lifelong mission since the age of 6 to find him justice.
This is just a day of relief for my family, and I'm just very honored to be able to see this day. And I didn't think it would come in my lifetime.
A sentiment shared by Jason Holt, whose great-uncle, Private First Class Thomas C. Hawkins, was also executed. Like Angela, Jason has fought for decades.
For us, his legacy is important because we stand on his shoulders. I hope his soul is at peace.
Again, that was Michelle Choi reporting.
The U.S. Army says relatives of the soldiers may be entitled to benefits. Just head on over to KHU.com to learn more information.
Ain't no maybe. They are entitled to benefits. You see how this is a great niece and a great uncle, a great nephew? Listen, this is why genealogy is extremely important. You have to do it. You just, like I say, even if you can't go no further than your grandmother right now, make that family tree. No, Tananda, they ain't say nothing about African because none of these brothers were African. These Buffalo Soldiers were straight up Indians. When you go look up the research on the original first Buffalo Soldiers, they were Indians. Okay? Let's really be clear about that. Let's really, really be clear about that. But yes, they are entitled to benefits that their relative died for. Okay? They are entitled to benefits. It's one more other one I want to show y'all. Hold on. But yeah, they want to come back and right the wrong now. Of course. Child, please. Let me see. I got another one I want to show y'all. Is this the one? I don't know.
To enjoy the pristine grounds or to visit a loved one. As they walk by, they often don't realize how much history there is behind the headstones that surround them. At Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas, there are 17 headstones in a row. They are unusual markers in what they don't show. While neighboring headstones list the service member's name, dates of birth and death, branch of service, military rank, and significant military awards, 17 reflect only their names and dates of death, with no rank or military affiliation indicated. There is a story behind these 17 headstones. It is a story of racial tensions that boiled over into one of the most notorious mutinies in American military history. And it is a story of how this incident forever changed military justice. The 3rd Battalion, 24th Infantry Regiment, was a unit of Buffalo Soldiers, black enlisted men commanded by white officers. After the U.S. joined World War I, the Army expanded dramatically in size. To accommodate the training of new draftees, camps were constructed across the southern tier of the United States throughout the summer and fall of 1917. In July, the soldiers of the 3rd Battalion were sent to guard the construction of one such camp, Camp Logan in Houston, Texas. Texas was firmly part of the Jim Crow South in 1917, and the white residents of Houston did not welcome the sight of black men in Army uniforms carrying weapons. For their part, the soldiers of the 3rd Battalion bristled at the racist taunts and insults hurled at them by the local populace. Verbal abuse was oftentimes augmented by physical harassment by the members of Houston's notoriously racist police force. Events came to a head on the night of August 23, 1917. Earlier that afternoon, a respected non-commissioned officer from the 3rd Battalion was beaten, shot at, and detained by Houston police while outside Camp Logan. Rumors spread among the troops like wildfire. Though the soldier was released by the police, some of his comrades believed he had been killed. Others believed a white mob was descending upon Camp Logan to attack the troops. 100 or more of the soldiers took up arms and marched upon the town. There was indiscriminate shooting, as well as deliberate targeting of civilians and military alike. Amid the chaos, 19 persons died, 15 white and 4 black. Although Army officials later concluded that consistent racist hostility contributed to the violence, the soldiers ultimately left camp against direct orders and were charged with mutiny and various other crimes per the Articles of War. The 3rd Battalion was disarmed and shipped to San Antonio, where 118 of them were court-martialed at Fort Sam Houston over the course of 3 trials in late 1917 and early 1918. It was the largest mass court-martial in Army history. All 3 trials were flawed by serious irregularities, which included a rush schedule and only a single officer appointed to defend all the defendants. And that officer was not an attorney. Only 7 were acquitted. 91 soldiers were sentenced to prison and 19 executed. Many criticized the first set of executions as the equivalent of a federal lynching, and the public outcry led to the Army implementing an immediate change to the Articles of War in January 1918. The change prohibited future executions without War Department review, and all military death sentences in the continental United States would require presidential review. Of the 16 soldiers sentenced to death in the 2nd and 3rd courts-martial, President Wilson approved the execution of 6 and commuted the sentences of 10. All 19 were hanged and then buried at Salado Creek in unmarked graves near Fort Sam Houston, where they've been tried and imprisoned. 2 of those executed had their bodies claimed by their families. The remainder were ultimately reburied in the Fort's Post Cemetery in 1937. As a result of their trial and sentencing, the soldiers' headstones reflect only their names and dates of death. The National Cemetery Administration is committed to telling the story of the Houston mutineers and the 17 soldiers who rest there in a single row, with only their names and dates of death to mark them.
I hope that they have changed that. I hope that they have updated that. But listen, like I said, these people aren't more intelligent. They aren't smarter. They're just more conniving. Okay. That's literally all that means. Okay. We have a lot that this country owes us. A lot. It's just you won't find it and you won't get it unless you do your genealogy. That's the only way. The fact that these men were hanged and tried and sentenced to life and nobody revisited until 108 years later tells you everything you need to know. Okay? That's it. It tells you everything you need to know. But I thought that I would bring this to y'all because I was like, this is crazy. The things that we think, don't happen inside of the military. Whole time, it's just as bad in the military. Still in 2025. It's still in 2025 just as bad in the military as it was or as it is and was on the outsides. Do not let people, even the people in the military will lie to you and tell you, well, I mean, it's got its stuff, but what's that? It's not that big of a deal. It's not that bad. Somebody put in the comments earlier, unless you're going to get some medical benefits, some school or something like that, care your ass about them white folks military. Trust me, when they really need you, they'll do another draft. They already set it in motion already. Okay. But I promise you, it's still just as bad in the military today. It's just that they're not unaliving people like this. Now you just coming up missing. You get it? Now you're going missing. Now, they finding reasons to say they don't know what happened. And remind you, the military has always and always do to this day, they investigate themselves. So that's no different from like if I'm in charge or I'm being charged for stealing out of a store and somebody be like, Voodoo, you stole out the store. You need to be tried. And I said, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try myself, look at the evidence. And if I find that I actually stole out of the store, then I'm going to put myself in jail. That's what the military does. Has done then and still to this day. That's what they did. That's what they do right now. Okay? Don't ever get that twisted. So there's no such thing as a real fair trial in the military unless you're one of the chosen ones. There's not that. Listen, It's all a bunch of smoke and mirrors, okay? It's all a bunch of smoke and mirrors. But I'm just glad my child don't want nothing to do with no military stuff, child. Thank you, Lord. But again, I'm not telling nobody not to join because they got reasons to join. Education, medical, all types of stuff. Maybe you want to pick up a trade. I don't freaking know. But don't give them folks 20 years. It's almost like going to prison for 20 years. You get it? But yeah, I wanted to bring that to y'all because I thought that was super dope about this thing. But again, I can't stress enough about genealogy, you guys. This is the most important thing you can do is do your genealogy. You want reparations? You're owed more than $2, $3, or $50 trillion. You are owed way more than that. Do your genealogy, and I promise you, you'll be surprised the things that you realize you owed. Deserving one, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate you. You'll be surprised what the government owe you because they won't tell you. They want you to go. They really don't want you to look for it. They want to keep you blinded. That's why they got people around here saying we had ethnogenesis and stuff like that. And they got other people around here saying we are from Africa, Pan-Africans, because they don't want you to know the truth. They call them agents, okay? But with that being said, y'all, that was all I have for today's Educational Friday. Shout out to everybody in the building. Make sure y'all like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We do this every Friday. It's called Educational Friday. I don't know if I'll be able to do it next Friday because I fly out to New Orleans. I might bring my laptop. I don't know. You know what I mean? But yeah, we'll see. But we do this every Friday, Educational Friday, where we dive deep into Black American history, Black history, Indigenous history, whatever you want to call it. And we've learned stuff and unlearned stuff that we were taught that was wrong. So we've learned a lot and unlearned a lot as well. But shout out to everybody in the building, you guys. I got to get up off of here. Love y'all down to the ground. I will catch y'all on the next one. Tomorrow I'll be live at the Dollhouse. Make sure y'all pull up over there. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'll be live over there at some point. Make sure y'all pull up over there. Love y'all down to the ground. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
Can you hear me now? Oh, let's go. It's your boy Big Chew, the voice of the beat. You know what I want? Blaze up. Come on, Blaze up.
It's the beat for me.
Wow, 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 wow. For your guy, for your B-O-Y. Drop it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Do it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Come on, baby, we live. For your boy. For your boy. Also for your boy. Fix it for your boy. Drop it for your lift it up.
Mr. Carroll, how you give the voodoo doll time to talk? I don't get no fucking time to talk.
Who the voodoo doll is?
The nigga you just had up here.